Good morning, happy Friday, and happy Valentine's Day all the way from Harare, Zimbabwe. My name is Tetenda Mandingwa. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, but if you're new here, then a brand new welcome to you. I'm a content creator, a writer, and an advocate that is based in Harare, Zimbabwe, and I hope that we can have a very beautiful discussion today. And if not, I wish you well, and I thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video anyway. As you can see by the title of this video, the topic we're going to be discussing today is going to be a very triggering one, and so I encourage you to turn away if this is a topic that makes you uncomfortable, or if it's a topic that you're not able to stomach. But if you are able to listen to it and you are able to stomach it, I thank you once again for taking the time to watch this, and please share this with anyone that you think might be able to benefit from it, even if that person is not you. The question therein is, how do I know if somebody is about to start hitting me? How do I know that the person, especially the man in this case that I'm dealing with, is going to be a violent one? Because if I have to leave before he hits me, how do I know he's going to? And while there are some obvious signs, for example, threats against your life, threats against your well-being, I would like to use this video in particular to discuss some of the more nuanced, some of the more invisible signs to look out for that a lot of people might miss and only realize in hindsight. One of the key signs to look out for if you're trying to figure out if the man that you're with is potentially violent, if he's not been violent with you already, is if he has the personality of what I call the Punisher. Now, the Punisher is somebody who is very sensitive to rejection, sensitive to disrespect, sensitive to any perceived slight against them or their invisible boundaries that they've set. And they oftentimes respond to this with consequences or punishments that are not proportionate to the initial deed that happened in the first place. So, for example, let's say they're in a restaurant and they call out for a waiter, and the waiter either doesn't see them or the waiter ignores them. They respond to this not by waiting patiently or by even just being slightly irritated, as some of us would be. They respond to this by putting that waiter to task when they finally get their attention. They respond to this by making a scene. They respond to this by changing the mood and atmosphere of the dinner overall. What you need to look out for is whether or not their responses are in proportion to what has actually happened. Another example that I can give you is, this is an example that I've actually seen happen in real time. There was a bike that was parked in front of this man's house. And this man, instead of moving the bike just a few feet to the left or to the right, or leaving a note on the bike, as many people usually do, he actually took this person's bicycle and not only moved it to a different location, but he hid it behind someone else's gate in that location so that the person who left their bike there would not be able to find their bicycle in the first place. So I'm using this as an example to paint a greater picture of how almost ridiculous their punishments for people are, because that's one thing that they are very obsessed with. And this trait is typically a sign that you're dealing with somebody who's very pathologically violent, because it doesn't matter where you are. It does not matter the context. They feel like somebody has crossed them, no matter how small. They always have to have a punishment. And if they're not in a situation where someone has done something for them to punish them for, they typically talk a lot about all of the punishments they would want to give to somebody. So let's say you're watching TV with someone and he says, if they were to do that, I would do this. Now, again, we all sometimes have those kinds of conversations where we discuss hypotheticals. But with the Punisher, their hypotheticals almost always involve them coming out on top at the expense of other people, whether or not it was deserved. So remember, the consequence or the punishment is never in proportion to what has actually happened. It's equivalent to being given the silent treatment for 2 days because you didn't cook the right meal, or because you forgot to give them something, or because of an oversight on your part. The punishment is never proportionate. Another sign to look out for that the man that you're dealing with could potentially be violent towards you is actually your instinct and your energy around this person. Oftentimes, our instinct will communicate to us very quietly that the territory we're in is very dangerous. And so if you find yourself feeling very uneasy, if you find yourself feeling deep things in your stomach, if you find yourself hesitating before you go to their house, if you find yourself unable to fully relax and settle and sleep around this person, there's a very high chance that this person is making you feel unsafe at best, or someone that could actually be a physical danger to you at worst and more. Think about those times where you're on your way home and you suddenly feel the need to take a different route or a different route. Think of the times where you just have a very weird feeling about something before it happens, and then it happens. Sometimes it also comes in the form of questions that quickly pop up in your head when you see something or feel something that they've done that doesn't seem to make sense, but then to the logical, or to the naked eye, it seems to make a lot of sense. So listen to your instinct with this one. If there's one thing that Bishop R.C. Blakes always says, men lie, women lie, energy doesn't. The third sign to look out for is if they use a violent language or even a violent or aggressive tone in situations or contexts or in discussions where it's not needed. For example, let's say they describe somebody lying to them as they cut me in the throat. There's always an exaggeration of what a situation or context actually is, very similar to the lack of proportion in the first example that we gave, where usually they give consequences or punishments that are not proportionate. There's always an added level of blood, of violence, of death, of murder, of pain or destruction. Usually the words that come out of somebody's mouth frequently, the way somebody talks, oftentimes is an indicator of how they're processing things inside their head and in their hearts. And so if what they're communicating, how they're communicating, is typically very aggressive, typically very violent, that could be a sign that the person you're dealing with will eventually realize that violence, but with you instead. There was a therapist actually that I worked with who said to me during a time when I was in a relationship, who said, their exact words were, "You better leave because one day he's going to miss the wall and get your face." Using physical intimidation, aggression, or threats against you and your well-being is one of the number one signs that the person is going to hit you. When a man communicates violent action towards you, that usually means that he's already thought about it and he's already decided that he's going to do it. Whether he's conscious of this or it's in his subconscious mind, you have to understand that the natural instinct of a man when they're in a relationship with a woman is very, very protective. So a man who has true protective feelings over the woman that he is with typically cannot imagine himself or other people enacting harm towards her. That's why you can find that sometimes when a man sees that another guy is trying to talk to his girl, he can get very irritated, very agitated. That's why when a man finds out that his girl was violated, they can get very violent towards that other man. Men are naturally very protective over the women that they value and over the women that they love. And so if he's able to bring himself to a point where he can imagine enacting violence against you, it means that he's already subconsciously or consciously decided that he's going to use it against you at some point. Now, some signs of physical aggression could be anything from punching the wall, as I said, or slamming their fists or their wrists on the table or their palm on the table to kind of assert their dominance. Or, for example, putting you in situations where you feel unsafe or, where your physical health is compromised. That's typically a sign that a man is going to enact violence against you. Specifically, if he then says it, for example, if he says things like, "I'm going to give you a beating, I'm going to hit you, I'm going to slap you, I'm going to beat the F out of you," that kind of thing. That's usually a sign that a man will actually do it. And the final sign that I'd like to discuss is a sign that is very, very serious. Here is the number one sign that the person that you're with is not only going to be violent towards you, but might actually take your life. And that is choking and strangulation. When somebody chokes you or strangles you outside of a consensual context, if you know what I mean, that's a very high sign that the violence you're experiencing already is going to escalate into something that could land you in the hospital if you're lucky, or land you 6 feet under. For example, someone that I know personally told me that when she was sitting with her boyfriend at the time at the dinner table, but they were not having dinner, they were studying, he took his laptop charger and she thought that he was going to go and charge his laptop, but he actually put the charger around her neck and tugged on it as if he was going to choke her. And then when she stopped him, she said, "Why did you do that? What are you doing?" And his exact words were, "I just wanted to see how you would respond if I actually did it." Someone who does that is someone who is grooming you for an escalation of the violence that you're already experiencing, or it's a major introduction to the violence that you're going to experience for the rest of the relationship until you leave.